Making a character doesn't have to be such a headache. In this tutorial, I will teach you how you can make and rig your character in just a few minutes with Skin Modifier. Skin Modifier is super quick and simple tool, and with it you will be able to make your character and rig them with ease in the matter of just a few minutes. Now, you will still need to use sculpt mode to give your character a face, but still with Skin Modifier you can make a perfect base for your sculpt. So, let me introduce you to this amazing new tool, and without further ado, let's get started. Now, if you want to make a human character with Skin Modifier, what you will need is a reference image. You don't need to use these reference images I use here. You can find reference images like this all over internet. But be careful, your reference image needs to have one view of the front of your character and one view of the side of your character. Okay? And after you get the reference image, what you need later is a single vertex. Now, there are two ways you can add a single vertex. You can add a plane, go into the edit mode, select all points, press M, select add center, and by doing that you are going to cause all points of this plane to collapse into this single vertex. Or you could use some add-ons. Go to edit, preferences, go to add-ons and type extra. Enable add mesh extra object, and if you do that, under mesh you should see this single vertex, and if you select add single vertex, Blender will automatically give you this single vertex. These are the two ways you can use to add a single vertex to your scene. Okay, now that we have a single vertex, now we are ready to start making a character. First, we will need to set up a modifiers for this single vertex. First, what you need to do, add a mirror modifier, then add skin modifier, and after that add subdivision surface, and you can scale subdivision surface up to level 3. Your modifiers need to be set up in this order. Now, this object has flat shading. To smooth this out, under Skin Modifier, enable Smooth Shading. And okay, now that we gave this object Smooth Shading, we are ready to start turning this object into a character. First, your single vertex needs to be placed here, around the hip of your character. Go into the front view and enable X-ray mode by pressing this button here. Now select this single point and press E to extrude, and pull this point up here. And okay. Now, as you can see, we are making a shape for the torso of this character, but before we actually go any further, one more thing you need to understand. Do you see this red circle around this point here? Well, this red circle means that this point has a root. Now, whenever you use Skin Modifier, one of your points will need to have a root. And I recommend you that you always keep the root at the first point you made, and in this case that is this point here. To move root to this point here, simply select Mark Root. Okay, now that we did that, now we have a torso for this character, but we need to set up this torso in a way that is matching this reference image. So how are we going to do that? Well, first, select both of these points, press right click and select Subdivide. Select this new point we have in the middle and move it a tiny bit down. Now we need to change the scale of this point. Usually to change the scale, you use the scale tool or press S, but as you can see, I just did that and nothing is happening. To change the scale of something that has a skin modifier, what you need to do is press Ctrl A, and as you can see, by doing that, I can change the scale of this point. If you want to change the scale only on X or Y radius, what you can do, you can press N, select radius X and increase it, or you can select radius Y and increase it instead. Okay, now that I explained that, we can start giving this torso a nice shape that is matching this reference image. To do that, simply keep adding more points and changing their scale until you get the shape that is matching this reference image. We will also need to have a few additional points for the neck. We will take care of the head as well, but we will deal with the head last. For now, let's only take care of the body. Select this point, press C to extrude, move it up. Now select these 2 points, right click and subdivide them. Select these 2 points, scale them down with Ctrl A. Now select these 2 points, move them down, and maybe scale this point down and this one up a bit. And okay, we have this nice shape for the torso. Scale this down just a tiny bit and maybe move it up. Okay, we have this nice shape for the torso on the front view, but at the side this doesn't really look all that well. So that is why you need a reference image for your character on the side, so you could give your character a decent shape from the left and the right side. Now go to the left side, left view of your character, and let's start moving these points in a way that is matching this reference image from this side. Select this point, move it forward, move this one as well, move this point forward as well, and this one too. Now we need to start changing their scale. Select this point and scale it down on the Y radius. Move it back. Scale it just a tiny bit up. Okay, scale this point up as well. Now select this point, scale it down a tiny bit. Okay. Let's actually scale this point up on the Y radius. And okay, this torso is now matching this reference image. And now it's time that we start giving this torso some arms. Now to add some arms, let's select this point here and press E to extrude and move this point here. Now select E to extrude again and move this point here. Okay, now we need to start giving these arms a proper shape. But now torso will actually get in the way. We won't see what we're doing because of the torso. So let's actually select all points for the torso and move them back like this. Okay, we will pull all these points back in their proper position later. Right now we just need them out of the way so we could better see what we're doing. Now, these arms are way too big. So let's set both X and Y radius on these points for the arms to something like 0.25. We need to make sure both X and Y radius have equal value. Now press Ctrl A to scale both of these points down. And now we will do the same thing we did for the torso. We will start adding more points and we will move them around until we get the shape that is matching this reference image. Let's select these 2 points, subdivide them, move this point here where the elbow is. Maybe scale this up a tiny bit. Now select these 2 points, right click subdivide, select this point, move it here, scale it up a tiny bit, like this. Okay, now to make this arm match this reference image even better, select these 2 points and subdivide them. Move this new point here and very slightly scale it down. Okay, now as for this part of the arm, select these 2 points, subdivide it, move this point here and scale it up. Okay, now we need to make sure that these arms are matching the reference image from this side as well. So let's select each one of these points and move them around until they are matching this reference image. Okay, like this. And if they're not matching reference image correctly, you can always scale this up on the Y radius a little. Like this. Okay. We could scale this up a tiny bit on the Y radius as well. And okay, we took care of these arms. Don't worry about the hands, we will add them later. But right now we need to put this torso back into its proper shape. So select all these points for the torso and move them here in the front view. Okay, like this. And also, don't worry if your mesh is breaking. I will show you how to fix this problem we have here. Now, I recommend you that whenever you have the character, that you place your character in either A or the T pose. Now, the way we will fix this area where the mesh is breaking is by moving these arms in a T pose. Now, if you're wondering why this mesh is breaking, well, this is because Blender sometimes has a hard time figuring out in what way you want your mesh to wrap around all these different points. And whenever you are in a situation like this, what you need to do in order to fix it is you need to play with your points. You need to move them around, you need to scale them up and down until you get the shape that isn't breaking your mesh. Now, we will fix this broken area, like I said, by moving these arms in a T pose. And this is how we are going to move this arm in a T pose. Select this point here, press Shift S and select cursor to selected. Now press this button here and switch it from median point to 3D cursor. Now select all these points for your arm and select this rotation tool. And as you can see, by setting this to 3D cursor, what Blender will do is it will move this rotation tool to this place where 3D cursor is. And now we can nicely move these points like this. And as you can see, now we have a nice shape for this mesh that isn't breaking anything. This is what I meant when I said that you need to play around with your mesh, to move points around, to scale them up and down until you get the shape that isn't breaking your mesh. Now that we have the shape like this, let's switch this back from 3D cursor to median point. And now we also need to a tiny bit improve this shape so that it is better matching this reference image. Select all these points for the arm and move it a tiny bit up. Now select this point here and scale it up a tiny bit. Select this point and scale it down like this. Okay, this is great. Now, the torso of our character should have a little bump here. So to take care of that, let's select these 2 points and subdivide them. Now that you have this point here, you need to move it a tiny bit forward, like this. Scale it just a tiny bit down on the Y radius. Move still this a tiny bit forward. Scale this maybe just a tiny bit. Scale this a tiny bit down on the X radius. And this one up on the X radius. And okay, we have a nice shape for the torso. Now let's give our character some legs. Select this point, move it a tiny bit up, press C to extrude, move this point here. Now select this point, the first one we made, and mark it as a root. Now select this point, press C to extrude it, and move it all the way down here to where the feet begin. Now set both the X and Y radius to 0.25. Okay, great. And now scale it down like this. Now we will do to these legs the same thing we did for the arms. Select this point here, scale it down with Ctrl A, select this point, move it up a bit. Okay, great. Now select these 2 points, right click, subdivide. Select this point, move it a tiny bit here. Select these 2 points, subdivide them. Move this point a tiny bit here. Press Ctrl A to scale this up. And okay, we have this decent shape for the torso from the front view. Now let's see how this looks at the side. Let's move these points to their proper position on the side view. Okay, like this. Now we need to play with scales. Let's scale this down on the X radius, this point here. Set the scale until it is matching this reference image. Let's scale this up on the X radius a tiny bit. And now select these 2 points. Let's subdivide them. Select this point in the middle. Scale it down and move it at the back. Just to give this knee a bit more better look. Now let's start giving our character some feet. Select this point, press E to extrude, and move this point here where feet ends, where feet are. Now select this point, set both the X and Y radius to 0.25 and scale this down a bit. Now extrude this point. Place this point here, this will be for the toes. Select this point and move it here, this will be for the heel. And maybe we can move this point a tiny bit up. Select now all 3 of these points and scale them down a tiny bit on the Y radius. to give these feet a tiny bit more flatter look. And now let's start. Now let's select this point, scale it down on the Y radius. And okay, now we have some decent feet for our character. Now that we took care of the feet, now it's time that we take care of the hands. Now to take care of the hands, select this point here and press E to extrude it. Move this point around here and scale it up a tiny bit. Select this point, press E to extrude it, scale it down with Ctrl A, and now press E to extrude, and this is going to be our point for the finger. Now select these 2 points, scale them down. Now let's duplicate them. Move these 2 points here, duplicate these points with Shift D. Select these 2 points and press F to merge them. Move these points here, and okay. Now we have the hand with 2 fingers. Let's duplicate these 4 points. Let's merge them with this point here. And okay. Now we have this decent hand. Now let's select all points for this finger. Let's move them a tiny bit to give them a proper position. Now select these 2 points and move them down to make this hand a tiny bit shorter, to make these fingers shorter. Now select this point. Press Shift D to duplicate it. Select these 2 points, press F to merge them, and press E to extrude it. Now select these 2 points, move them around to give this hand a better shape. And I think that this hand is a little too short. So select these points, move them a tiny bit here, and let's reposition these points. Maybe scale this up a bit. Actually no. Instead let's move this point tiny bit back. And okay, we have a decent hands for our character. Now the last thing our character is still missing is the head. To give this character a head, let's select this point, move it down a tiny bit, and let's actually go to the side. Now let's press E to extrude this point, move this point here, where the head is. And now let's select these 2 points, press right click and subdivide them, and press Ctrl A to scale up this point. So move this point here and scale it up a tiny bit. Move this point back and scale it up as well. Now we need to actually fix this neck. To do that, let's select these 2 points. These 2 points, press right click and subdivide them. Scale this point down and let's move it around a tiny bit. Okay. Okay. We have a decent shape for the head. Now the only thing this head is still missing is the chin. To take care of the chin, select this point, extrude it. Let's scale it down a tiny bit. Move it here. Scale this point up. Or actually, come to think of it, let's select this point, delete it. Let's actually extrude this point here. Okay, like this. Okay, let's reposition some of these points. Move this point up here and this one around here. And okay, we have this decent shape for the head of our character. And okay guys, we used skin modifier to make this character. But remember guys what I told you in the start. You can use skin modifier to also give your character a rig. Now, how are we actually going to do that? Well, this is how. Select your character, press Shift D to duplicate it, and we can hide this original character, and we can honestly hide the reference images as well. We won't need them anymore. Now select this character, and what you need to do is this. Let's select this Create Amateur option on Skin Modifier. And as you can see, by doing this, Skin Modifier created this rig. However, this rig actually has a few issues. First, Skin Modifier only created the rig for one half of your character. And the second problem is that we actually don't have a good setup of bones. This arm has way too many bones, and these fingers have way too few bones. So how are we going to fix this? Let's undo this with Ctrl Z. Well, first, select your character, go into the edit mode, open the X-ray mode. First, if you didn't know this, Skin Modifier will create each one of these points into a bone. So to make sure that Skin Modifier creates a proper rig, we need to first get rid of the points where we don't want new bones, and then we need to add new points where we want to add some bones. So for example, select these 3 points around the arm, press right click and dissolve them. By doing that, we will make these points disappear. Now let's select these points around the finger, press right click and subdivide them. And when you subdivide something, you should see this subdivide box here. Open it and set number of cuts from 1 to 3. That will set it up so that when you subdivide, you won't get 1 new point into each of these fingers, you will get 3. Now let's also do the same thing here, set number of cuts to 3. Now we don't need this many points around the head. Select this point, delete it, select these 2 points and dissolve them. Now don't worry if doing so messes up the shape of your character. Right now what is important is setting up the functioning rig, not pretty character. Now let's select these 2 points, dissolve them. We don't need this point here for the heel, so let's delete it. Okay, now that we have these nicely set up points, let's select Mirror Modifier and let's apply it. And now let's select Create Amateur option. And okay, now as you can see, Skin Modifier created this proper rig. Now select this second character we made. Just be careful that you don't select the rig by accident. Delete it. Now let's bring back our first character. And let's nice and steady move this rig into the middle of our character, like this. Okay, try to aim that your rig is as close to the center as possible. And after you do that, select your character, apply all these modifiers, select your character, hold shift, select your rig, press Ctrl P and select with automatic weight. And if you do that, if you select your rig, go into the pose mode. Now as you can see, we have this decent rig that is nicely moving this character we made. And okay guys, so this has been Skin Modifier, a cool tool that you can use to create a nice base for your sculpt, and a cool tool that you can use to quickly rig your character. And with that, we reached the end of this tutorial. I hope you found this tutorial useful, and if you did, please like, share and subscribe. I hope you will put the knowledge I gave you to good use, and see ya guys in the next video.